Hi, this is Bev from Skibbereen Speakeasy. For obvious reasons, I'm not actually speaking to you from the Tanyard, our usual venue, but we still have a fantastic selection of brilliant spoken word performers. Thanks very much to Paul Kestel for getting in touch with our lineup from April and May, and they have all sent us fantastic recordings of themselves at home, especially for you. We're going to release these in special shows with an introduction and 2 or 3 performances, and you will be able to get your own drinks and coffee during the breaks. If you want to catch up on any of the performances, they will all be published on our website at skibbereenspeakeasy.com on our Speakers Corner and Video Corner pages. So without further ado, our very first show begins with the multi-talented Paddy Cullivan, who is a historical entertainer and needs no introduction to many. He'll be followed by Ballady Hobbs' own Moze Jacobs with a fantastic journey through a variety of spoken word art forms, and capping it off is our own published poet Anton Floyd with another fantastic selection of his own work. So please sit back and enjoy, and we hope to see you again soon.
Hello, my name is Paddy Cullivan. I'm a musician, singer, piano player, guitar player, performer, satirist. I used to write for Callan's Kicks. My band, the Camembert Quartet, was the house band on the Late Late Show. But now what I do mainly is I'm a historical entertainer. So I've taken my old art school background, my love of history, put it all together in these multimedia shows where I sing the songs of, let's say, 1798, but I also tell the story with about 300 images of the time and afterwards. And I use the 10 Dark Secret format to kind of make history really exciting for people. So these are shows I would do in art centres around the country to audiences of between 60 and 200. And so I love this new gig I'm doing. And at the moment, what I'm doing in the time of the coronavirus is writing a book based on the 10 Dark Secrets of 1798. So please go to my Indiegogo page and help me fund that. They always say about these funding things that it's, we're just giving the money to fund their thing. You're actually buying the book in advance, a bit like records used to have advance sales back in the 70s when music used to sell. So anyway, I'm very happy to be asked to talk about this. A little bit about my background. My dad, Tom Cullivan, is a composer. My mother, Nancy Cullivan, is a tapestry artist. So they live in Galway. And then I work mainly in Donegal or in Dublin. And they were a great inspiration to me because my mom is American. And in 1982, they bought a house in North Great Georgia Street. So I grew up in a Georgian house, now completely dilapidated. They saved the house and spent everything they had doing it at the same time as a lot of other people were doing that in Dublin. So I grew up in a kind of a beautiful Georgian city that was being systematically wiped out and destroyed. A lot of the excuse for that being that this was British architecture and all of that. So that's something I deal with in the show as well. Because actually what we wiped out at that time was the whole era of 1798 and many of the houses and buildings that some of the protagonists lived in. Like Frascati House, where Lord Edward lived, or all of High Street and Bridge Street and Oliver Bond. And then speaking of Oliver Bond, after Mount Temple, where I went to secondary school, and I started bands then, and I got really into history, but also it was a Protestant, Catholic and dissenter school. So it was mixed. So that was my interest in Protestants came. And then I went to NCAD and did graphic design, but before that I did a foundation year. My first project was about streets named after Republicans. Why are they always in working class areas? Why are they blocks of flats? Why are they train stations? Whereas the kind of streets named after Wellington and Brighton and Camden and all of that are generally posh streets on the south side of Dublin. So it was kind of I'm very interested in memorialising, iconoclasm, things like that. How do we remember? And a big thing I've done with 1798 is to take the images and propaganda of the time, which are all propaganda, because the winners told the history. Then there was the losers telling the history in their way, with illustrations and drawings and magnificent stuff. So this is the kind of thing I'm really interested in, is how is history imparted to us? And the secrets are about how, we're given one version of history officially, but then what's really under the current there. So NCAD was really just a mind-blowing experience. I loved it. graphic design, of course, helped me with that. And then my last project in the 4th year was to do with, again, Georgian Dublin, but it was to do with a history of Sean McDermott Street. And in it, what I did was and I hope to publish this someday and actually do it for all of Dublin, so that if aliens land someday, 3 million years from now, they can rebuild Georgian Dublin from these books. So effectively what I did was I would take the street, all of Sean McDermott Street, and I drew it in its Georgian form and then what it had turned into. So 82% of that street was demolished in 1983. Horrendous damage was done to the city. So this was my kind of fascination. And then later on, even getting into the history, that was built by Luke Gardner, who of course was an MP in the Irish Parliament and died in the Battle of New Ross in 1798. So all of these things tie together. He was a property developer with exquisite taste who built Northside Georgian Dublin, and yet he dies fighting the Republicans of the United Irishmen. And later I got into the story then of the actual rebels themselves, and the fact that all of our rebellions have an amazing soundtrack of songs like the Shan Van Vocht and later on the West's Awake and all of that, and I even wrote original songs for the show as well. So I'm kind of fascinated with the entire, how would I put it, the pictorial representation of history. Then the destruction of history later on, how we wiped out a huge amount of it. Even how people were treated very much. There's a fascinating character called Waddy Cox who gave us all the drawings that we know of pitch capping and flogging and half hanging and the walking gallows, these dreadful government tortures from the terror of 1797 and 98. But of course he was pilloried and eventually paid up because he put this really successful magazine called the Irish Magazine out, and that's how everybody learnt all these dreadful stories. So this magazine was in direct contravention of the official history, and they eventually had to pay him off, and he had to go to America. But it's all of this. The story after 1798 is even more fascinating, possibly, than the rebellion itself. But I do go into dark secrets in it as well about Wolfe Tone's parentage, the French general who scuppered Bantry Bay and Waterloo. I go into the amazing story of Lord Edward Fitzgerald, one of the most fascinating guys in the world, one of the most handsome Irishmen whose representation on the Lord Edward bar leaves a lot to be desired in town. And as NCAD students, we'd walk up and down looking at it going, who the hell got that gig? Because it's appalling. But actually, I love it as a piece of kitsch. So all of these things fascinate me. And it's kind of what I bring to the shows and try and bring a lot of humour, but also the seriousness of it. And also the kind of, what's incredible about these people, these Protestant Catholics and dissenters who decided everybody was equal, monarchies were no longer the way to go, kings were not gods, they were just the descendants of families who managed to seize the largest amount of land. Tom Paine, Lord Edward, Wolfe Tone, Napper Tandy, fascinating people who really are more modern than many of the thinkers we have today. And in fact, if we were to look at a signpost for how the future of the island should be after this crisis, and you know, I'm wondering, I always wonder how this crisis will impact the North. You know, will they go, shall we stick with Boris and the herd immunity thing, or shall we take our chances with the corrupt little Catholic 26 county state below? I'm sorry, I'm surmising here, but I'm just saying that it could hasten a united Ireland far quicker than we might have anticipated, and which would be no bad thing. But if we were to look at a signpost, 1798 really is an incredible moment where even Presbyterians and Protestants were Republicans and were looking for equality, and we're looking for a republic separate from the empire. The reasons that changes into Orange Unionism or loyalism and all the rest of it are fascinating, and there's something I go into in the show in great depth, and maybe will do again when I come down to Skibbereen at some point. It didn't mean a lot of them weren't socially liberal, but it just meant that they took loyalism as their way of getting change done within their system. Fascinating stuff, too intricate and deep to go into right now. But again, all of these things are grist to my mill. They're the thing I'm always trying to get across to people, that unless we look at this stuff, especially the art as well, because the art tells you everything. The art imparts so much about what people are thinking. And the great drawings of Cruikshank, of course, were used as dreadful propaganda, showing the United Irishmen as ape-like savages, just going around murdering people. And if we look at all of that stuff, it really is a signpost. I've had people, people with 15 followers on Twitter saying to me, "Actually, would leave all that old stuff behind and just live in the present day." But unfortunately, the more and more I read about this stuff, the more the answers to the present day are if we do study the past and do study history and see how they were dealing with the issues that were going on today. So, like I say, can't wait to make it down to Skibbereen sometime. Really, daunted by what's going on at the moment, but very excited about getting this book done. So please try and support it if you can, and you will get a magnificent copy. And of course, the more I raise, the nicer the book can be. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to have to print it on a non-existent toilet roll. But again, it's a great time to think about making art. Because we have no time to be distracted by anything else. And what I really want to happen though, after this crisis especially, is that we need to support all of the arts. We have to stop monopolizing or just shoehorning everything into one person, saying that there's only one poet or there's only one painter or there's only one writer. Ireland is just teeming with people who are brilliant and teeming with an artistic community that needs to be supported a huge amount more. But the first way of doing that is to support each other. And once we do that, then we have a bulwark that's strong to get that art across to people as well, because there's so many ways of doing it now. The main thing is to also make the official channels listen as well, and to let them know that there's incredible stuff going on that may not be on their radar, but it's on a lot of people's radar because of the way we're able to communicate directly with each other now. So I'm hoping that there'll be a great flowering in the 20s, akin maybe to the 20s back in the old days. And I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. And thanks so much for listening. I hope this is okay for you guys at the Speakeasy. And support each other and stay well.
Hi, I'm Moze Jacobs. I'm speaking to you from Ballydehope, near Skibbereen in West Cork, Ireland. Thank you to the Speakeasy for having me. We were going to do live things in March, and it would have been lovely, but of course the coronavirus struck, and now we're all learning how to do things online and trying to reproduce the energy that is there when you do something live and you can bounce off people in the audience who can bounce off you. This is different, but it's interesting to do. I'm slowly getting a bit of a grip on the technology, which is the hardest part actually. And thinking that I'm speaking to real people. I'm originally from Holland, as you can hear from the accent, which I can't lose at the moment. I don't know what to replace it with. I've been here 23 years. And I love Ireland. I feel at home here, and although I go back a lot normally, I have no ambition to ever leave this country for good. So I'm going to read something to you that is in a folder called The Sea and Ships. The folder looks a bit tatty because it's really old. I wrote this apparently when I was 10 years old and in school in England, where my mother had taken me because she studied dance. I have no recollection of ever writing this, but she gave it to me much later. And then, yeah, looks like I wrote it, and I like it because it has a certain flow. I also think that kids can do really nice writing if you let them and if you don't put pressure on them to perform, and if you do not criticize them too much, because that's always our problem. We take that critical voice with us into adulthood. And part of writing is that you have to sort of silence the editor who wants to continuously change what you've written. I even have it now. When I read it, again and again. To get it right, I want to change it, but I'll just leave it as it was, more or less. Escape over the lake. Our house was at the edge of the lake. Every night my father came home with fish. Sometimes my brothers would go with him. Another time they would go hunting and they would bring home a wild ox, a wolf, and once a mammoth, caught while already dying. But I, however much I prayed and asked, my father would not allow me to come and hunt. Yes, I was allowed to fish, but that was all. Once, while I and my father were fishing on our rafts, logs bound together, we heard a rumbling noise on the mainland. When we looked around, we saw the mountain, which always had stood so quiet and shadowy on the shore of the lake, as a fire giant. I, in a great fright, rode as fast as I could away from the hot lava. But my father, although he knew it was no use, went to save my mother and brothers, who were in the cave in the mountain. He and the whole family were buried under the lava, but I, thanks to my raft, made my escape to the other shore, where I started my new life. I did lie a little bit. I changed the first two words. Instead of home, I said house, because there's a lot of home in there. And when I lied, I stumbled. And there's a lot of things in there that are fantasy. I don't have any brothers. I don't think my father would have saved the rest of the family. So maybe it was a dream or imagination, or what I really like to think is that it was a previous life during the Ice Age and I was a little boy. Okay, but that is fantasy, maybe. I like fantasy and science fiction. If the Speakeasy had gone ahead, I would have presented this book, which we published last year, my colleague Hanneke van der Hoeven and myself. Hanneke did the beautiful drawings and I did the text. We're probably going to present it one day. Hanneke lives in Berlin, so she might not be there. But for the moment, we are creating a Facebook page called Raya Solanas. The book is about a female astronaut who lives in the 24th century, well known from Star Trek. She is also a scientific telepath, which allows her to communicate with the inhabitants of Titan, Saturn's largest moon. The book is about her voyage to Titan. And if you want to know what happened, you have to read it. Okay. There are some texts that I wrote when I was an adult that I do not remember. And I don't think it had anything to do with the drink or drugs, but we do have different sides to our personalities. And if we really pay close attention to ourselves, which is what we need to do during this pandemic, we could see that we change our personalities throughout the day, living from mood to mood, maybe getting angry or sad or upset, maybe missing other people, because a lot of our identities are bound up with other people and it's harder to be by yourself. Although very interesting. One poem that I wrote without any recollection is called Sleeping. Sleeping. I do not suffer from verified disorders with exotic names, but I can distinguish various personalities inside my head where I address myself as I. Get up, I tell myself, but I continue to slouch. Set to work, I shout furiously, but my eyes stay glued to the fatuous book and I read on. At night, I argue in front of the flat screen. I want to go out, but part of me to sleep and the rest is eagerly watching anything that moves, however nonsensical. In the shower. Turn off the taps. In the shower. Turn off those taps. She doesn't do what I want her to, but then suddenly someone turns off the tap. Likewise, I can imagine that inside me are slumbering a murderer, an adulteress, a bargain seller, prostitute, a betrayer of people, and head nurse, someone I do not know, but who can wake up at any moment as circumstances change. I'm glad that I write poetry because it helps me to sort out parts of myself that I'm not happy with or that I do not understand. So I write something throughout my life when I really feel stuck or don't know what's going on. This one is called Future X. I want to be intimate with someone who fears intimacy. It is my most persistent endeavor, the most painful and exquisitely beautiful. Rolling a boulder up a mountain, always the fear it will reverse and crush deeply buried hope. Oh, it will do just that, a form of resolution. I long for him who always escapes as I reach out, stretched to the limit. I am not the fabulous Rumi. He is real, tantalizingly close, reassuringly far. Nothing I want can stand the test of time, and yet I repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat, going in circles. So much wonder in circles, spirals, fractals. Maybe we can meet in the center that doesn't exist, that cannot hold, that always is. Apart from love, death seems to be a recurring theme in what I write. I don't set out to do so, but what moves me, makes me write. And this is written for my Aunt Hannah. Maybe exactly at the moment when she died, I like to imagine that I was in Ireland and she was in Holland, and she was alone. Maybe not literally so. Maybe there were nurses around her, but she was trapped in dementia. And I think that creates a lot of loneliness. It's called The Send-Off. It is a momentous occasion to shed one's skin, not knowing if you'll ever grow another. Perhaps the gap is smaller if you slip quietly from semi-oblivion, having unlearned most of life's lessons. To talk, to walk, to think, to perceive, to remember, and now even to eat and drink. A fade out, not the abrupt, devastating appearance of those final words, followed by rolling credits and outstanding debts. But whatever the quality of the send-off, I hope it will be bright outside as you leave the cinema. Writing this was like a kind of solace. It happened many years ago. It was nothing to do with the pandemic. But I think words and feelings can connect us to those who leave the earth. My last poem is also a little bit science fiction, but I call it science faction. Are we alone in the universe? I think not. I hope not. I know not. There is no proof, but the sound of wings just out of earshot. The battle in the sky reverberates daily, still hurting my eyes. The flashing of lights during lucid nights, magnetic blue and white, 10 times the sun. Red and yellow fire right across time. A loving embrace reaching through space. It's weaving a grid, pure waves of energy, us within it, bound and free. That's my evidence, nothing you can see. Scary, isn't it? Just feel it with me. Thank you, good night, and maybe see you at the speakeasy. Be well, be safe, be happy.
Hello, my name's Anton Floyd. I'd like to thank Paul Astle, Miriam O'Donovan and Bev Cotton for inviting me to contribute to the Speakeasy sessions. These take place in Skibbereen once a month at the Tanyard, but because of the strange times that we are all living through, the readings have migrated online. I hope that you are well and safe and that your families and friends are well and safe and remain so. I'm going to read a number of poems for you from my collection, Falling into Place, that was published in 2018 by Revival Press. I hope you enjoy the poems. The first poem I'm going to read is called Shehi, and it's dedicated to Rosemary Canavan and Michael Cunningham. Shehi Mountain may not inspire the awe of the beetling cliffs of Moher. Here's not the drama of Bearer's serrated ranges that crowd above Glengariff Bay, but Shehi's brow of naked rock and heather, rounded by all weathers, is my ancient of days. The roaming clouds, as if by his command, split this afternoon's westering light into a pair of golden compasses. They describe a shielding circle round our sky, our townlands, and our home places. There's another poem now about Shehi Moor, the mountain. It's called Daybreak Stirs on Shehi Moor, and it's for Daryl, one of my sons. Daybreak stirs on Shehi Moor. The heathers whisper the purple weather across the mountain bog. The mist's soft syllables caress the cotton grasses. Watery hollows are slow, open vowels, echoing a changing sky, and rills in pencil lines cross-hatch the hillside falls. When hen harriers rise, the sky dance of their wings is the sacred imprint of these skies. We live in Inchigila, and Shehi Moor is a dominating feature of our landscape. Also here we have a wonderful ribbon lake that runs from Balangiri to Inchigila. It's about 5 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide. And the next poem I'm going to read for you is called At Lochalua. At Lochalua. You dip gently your hand into the lake to test the color of the lapping water. It is the purest blue, an intense ultramarine, as if time had processed the world's store of lapis, had lavished this gift, this mesmerizing pigment, remaking this place as all-encompassing as the frescoes adorning the Scroveny chapel walls. Whatever it is, the angle of the sun, the blue vault of sky, the surface tension rippling outwards its mercurial mirrors, I am standing behind and above you, holding your shoulders to keep you from slipping. Then the miracle happens. Your head radiates such pulses of light. For all the world and more than ever, you are the angel I see through Giotto's eyes. We lived for many years in Cyprus, in the Eastern Mediterranean, And this next poem is called This the Boy. It was inspired by the poetry of Odysseus Elitis, and it is dedicated to my son Aegon. This the boy, bare-skinned, deeply tanned, tousled hair bleached, his radiating curls like the rays of the sun in a child's every day is summertime drawing. These the days when hayrick giants cross barefoot fields, harvesting childhood sunshine. This the country, the hillside vineyards slur the summer haze, where the still air clings to citric suns ripening, and cicada trees keen the overheat in ever mesmerizing echo drones. This the land, dry as olive bark, parched as powdered chalk. A scorpion is a medallion of stone, and under Byzantine domes, shouldering the press of noon, the golden icons of the risen Lord glow on whitewashed walls fringed by monkish pines. This the island, the moving seas, sails testing the angle of the wind, desires pitching like proud reefs caught in the reels of the sun. These the memories, like sea creatures, sifting silences, like pliant sponges wedded to the rocks beyond the reach of breathless divers. This next poem is called Dreaming of Wallace Stevens, my response to his poem The Disillusionment of 10 O'Clock. Dreaming of Wallace Stevens, dedicated to Daniel Lusk and Angela Patton. Last night I was asleep in my crisp white sheets, and now awake in my boots, I remember that I dreamed last night of baboons and periwinkles. And I remember the last part of the dream. It was of an insurance man in a train on his way home from the office, drunk with fatigue and asleep in his shoes. He was talking in his sleep. I think he was dreaming of sailors catching tigers in red weather. Today, I have decided to buy you a present, a beaded ceinture and socks of lace, and you may care to choose a pattern nightgown in any colour combination, rings of green and purple or yellow and green rings, maybe hoops of blue and yellow. I shall fix the clock too. It shall always be 1 minute before 10 o'clock. This next poem is called The Angel of History. It was inspired by the writings of Walter Benjamin, and he in turn was inspired by a painting of that name by Paul Klee. Angel of History. See his angel of history with wings outspread, turn to face the past and stare open-mouthed at the single catastrophe. His world lies wrecked, before him all is ruin. Though he looks fixedly, he sees memories fading, blown from view. That storm in paradise that raged in the past, he sees it raging still. The angel cannot stop it, wants to but cannot stay, wants to redeem our state from the mere mind and the leaden heart, wants to make whole what is dashed and lost. But his wings are caught in the maelstrom. It propels him backwards, irresistibly out of time, leaving us to progress. Under the piling ash that grows skywards, minute by minute, we sift from the debris vestiges of hope. This next poem is called In Honour of Mawar Sabet. Mawar Sabet was a prisoner of conscience held in the notorious Evin prison in Tehran, Iran. By 2010, she had already served 2.5 years of her imprisonment, when, on fabricated charges, she was convicted and sentenced to a further 20 years. While she was in prison, she wrote poetry, and her book Prison Poems, with translations by Bahia Nakhjavani, was published by George Ronald in Oxford in 2013. PEN International campaigned consistently for her release, and she was in fact released from prison in September 2017. Michael Longley was awarded the PEN International Prize for Poetry in 2017, and he announced Mawar Sabet as the Pen Pinter International Poet of Courage for 2017. I read Prison Poems and was greatly inspired by Mawar Sabet's generosity of spirit and example. And so I wrote this poem in honour of Mawar Sabet, and I sent it to Bahia, who is an old friend. In honour of Mawar Sabet, in memoriam Violette, and for Ali and Bahia, who shared her light. In her prison cell, she writes, recounting days, cruel years within those walls. There time itself plays tricks, and all she ever knew is now a distant haze. There were hopes of few, and life made sere and rough, her lucid words speak true. Against this hell, enough to recall a friend's kind hands, her shining eyes the proof. Proof against this living hell. Her eyes shine on, and in kind hands she finds the light, and in that light she presses on, she presses on. This next poem is called Falling into Place, Hineni, in memoriam Leonard Cohen. Weeks ago the field flickered with the accented syllables of clear red poppies. Now only seed pods remain, held like funeral urns on brittle stalks that stutter in the chilling rains. Falling into place wherever there's open ground, tiny seeds, like silent letters, knit themselves into the soil. There each will sleep in winter dark, dousing a dream of itself, one that lasts a season. And to honour the paradigm, time's trigger hand will tilt the world in the seed's favour, will stretch a munificent finger, a teeming touch to stir cell walls to life. So will they, stem and root, infix, begin to mine the ground, to inflect with supple strength new versions of themselves. Then will nature's green charge proclaim its readiness for poppies to fling again crimson flags to the fluent winds. I'd like to finish up with a poem called The Easter Tree that I've just written during this pandemic. Before I read it, I'd like to thank once again Paul, Miriam and Bev for this opportunity to share some poems with you. This poem is called The Easter Tree 2020, and it has an epigraph by Balzac. It says, "Solitude is fine, but you need someone to tell that solitude is fine." April. The forsythia someone planted sprays saffron, joys a fleeting life. It, like birds in flight, links continents, mocks frontiers. Both shine in song upon an anxious world. It is not just the crying child at night that intuits that it is alone. The human heart bears the weight of the future. The moon and the stars, the sun, and closer to home the mountains are indifferent to our joys, our griefs. Who then will care? Beauty is a chance of nature, a pulse in history, a gift. It is diminished when glimpsed alone.